So think about this for a second. How does a simple, completely ordinary childhood sore throat, something we've all had, end up quietly destroying a human heart years down the line if it's ignored? Sounds kind of impossible, right? But it's actually one of the most tragic, yet entirely preventable medical cascades we know of.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to treat this classic medical mystery like a high-stakes puzzle. We're looking at the domino effect of rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. Let's get right into it. Here's what we're tackling today: the strep-to-heart chain, friendly fire via molecular mimicry, and breaking down the Jones criteria. Then we'll cover diagnosing and treating rheumatic fever, building a lifelong shield with secondary prophylaxis, and finally, the chronic aftermath, rheumatic heart disease. By the end, you'll have all the high-yield NCLEX pearls perfectly mapped out.
Part 1. The strep-to-heart chain, from a sore throat to a systemic crisis.
Okay, so every catastrophic cascade needs a trigger, right? For us, it's group A beta hemolytic streptococcus, specifically causing pharyngitis. Good old strep throat. Now watch out, because here's a classic high-yield NCLEX trap. Only strep throat triggers rheumatic fever. Strep skin infections, like impetigo, they absolutely do not. Why? Well, it comes down to the strains. The specific strains that cause skin infections have different M protein types, and they just don't cross-react with cardiac tissue the same way. So lock this in. Rheumatic fever is exclusively preceded by strep throat.
So how does this domino effect actually play out? Step 1, obviously, is the strep pharyngitis. But step 2 is where things really go off the rails: untreated persistence. If a patient, say, bails on their antibiotics early, those streptococcal antigens just hang around. The immune system ramps up its response, and it snowballs into a massive systemic issue. This directly leads to step 3, molecular mimicry, which ultimately culminates in step 4, acute rheumatic fever.
Which brings us right to part 2, friendly fire, molecular mimicry. This is what happens when the immune system attacks itself. At its core, molecular mimicry is basically a tragic case of mistaken identity. See, the M protein on the wall of the strep bacteria structurally looks an awful lot like the proteins in the host's own heart valves, joints, and nervous system. So the immune system builds these cross-reactive antibodies and T cells to fight off the strep, but then it gets confused. It literally turns its weapons on the host's own healthy tissues. It's friendly fire. The body's defense mechanism becomes the absolute biggest threat. The timeline of this disease is absolutely fascinating and honestly a little terrifying. Day 0 is the initial strep infection, but notice this silent latent period. It takes roughly 2 to 4 weeks for acute rheumatic fever to actually flare up, and it gets wilder. 1 to 6 months later, long after that sore throat is completely forgotten, a neurological complication called Sydenham's chorea can just show up out of nowhere. And then, years or even decades down the line, we see catastrophic structural damage like mitral stenosis. This long, silent progression, that is exactly why prevention is the name of the game. So how do we actually spot this in a clinical setting? Let's move to part 3, the Jones criteria explained, the gold standard for diagnosing the first episode. We use the modified Jones mnemonic to nail down the major criteria. Let's break down the J, N, E, and S first. J is for joints, specifically migratory polyarthritis. This inflammation is exquisitely painful, and it literally moves from one large joint to the next. N is for nodules. These are firm, painless bumps right under the skin, usually over bony areas. E stands for erythromarginatum, which is this pink, ring-shaped rash that kind of comes and goes on the trunk. And S is for Sydenham's chorea. This causes involuntary, purposeless dancing movements and, sudden emotional shifts. Now listen closely here. As dramatic as these symptoms are, the excruciating pain, the uncontrollable dancing, they all miraculously and fully resolve without leaving a single trace of permanent damage behind. But then we have the O. You can kind of think of the O as shaped like a heart. It stands for carditis or pancarditis, which means inflammation of all 3 heart layers. I really want to pause here for a second, because this is absolutely the most dangerous manifestation. Unlike the joints or the skin, this silent symptom doesn't just flare up and fade away. It quietly, permanently scars the heart valves. It is literally the only criterion in this mnemonic that leaves a lasting, life-altering mark. Okay, knowing the criteria is just the starting line. Action is everything else. Part 4, diagnosing and treating rheumatic fever, securing the evidence, and the 3-tiered approach. To formally diagnose acute rheumatic fever, you need 2 major criteria, or 1 major plus 2 minor criteria. But here's the absolute catch. Just having clinical symptoms is not enough. You must have hard proof that the initial domino fell, meaning you need evidence of a preceding strep infection. Because the strep might actually be completely gone from the throat by the time these symptoms appear weeks later, we have to look for streptococcal serology. An elevated anti-streptolysin O, or ASO titer, is the most common test we run. It proves the strep was definitively there and that it triggered the massive immune response.
Once you've got the diagnosis, medical management follows a really strict 3-tiered strategy. Tier 1 is eradication. We wipe out any remaining strep with a full 10-day course of penicillin. Tier 2 is all about suppressing the acute inflammation, and this part's super fascinating. We actually use high-dose aspirin. The exquisitely painful arthritis we talked about, it responds so beautifully and rapidly to aspirin, usually within 24 to 48 hours, that it actually helps us confirm the diagnosis. If there's severe carditis involved, we'll step up to corticosteroids. And finally, Tier 3 is preventing recurrence, which leads us straight into our next major section.
And that third tier brings us to Part 5, lifelong shield secondary prophylaxis, preventing progressive valve damage. Let me tell you, this is without a doubt the absolute most critical long-term takeaway from this entire explainer.
I want you to really anchor the number 4 in your mind, because every single new strep infection causes a brand new immune attack on the heart. We have to build a shield around the patient. And we do this with benzathine penicillin G injections every 4 weeks. We aren't talking about oral pills where a dose might be forgotten or skipped. We mean a strict, unyielding, regular intramuscular injection every 4 weeks to guarantee total protection against a new strep infection.
So, how long does a patient have to endure these painful injections? Well, the duration scales directly with the initial cardiac injury. If they had rheumatic fever but managed to avoid carditis, it's 5 years or until they hit age 21. If they had carditis but it resolved, that bumps up to 10 years or until age 21. But what if they suffered persistent valve disease? Then we're looking at 10 years or until age 40. And if the damage is so severe that they require valve surgery, it is lifelong. Indefinite injections every 4 weeks to protect whatever vulnerable valve tissue they have left.
And what happens if that secondary prophylaxis isn't followed? Or what if that initial attack was just too severe to begin with? Part 6, Rheumatic Heart Disease, the tragic chronic aftermath.
Over years, sometimes decades of repeated immune attacks, the heart's delicate structures basically pay the ultimate price. The mitral valve is the one most frequently and severely affected. Over time, the valve leaflets undergo this progressive scarring, fibrosis, and calcification. They literally fuse together, stiffen, and narrow, causing a condition known as mitral stenosis. This is the classic, textbook, late-stage chronic manifestation of rheumatic heart disease. To pull this all together, just look at the stark contrast between the two stages. Acute rheumatic fever is that dramatic flare-up weeks after the initial sore throat. It's awful for sure, but it's reversible. Rheumatic heart disease, on the other hand, is the silent, permanent structural devastation that develops years later. It represents irreversible valve scarring that all too often ends with the patient needing complex open heart valve replacement surgery. Which leaves us with this final thought. Next time a doctor hands you or your kid a simple 10-day prescription of penicillin for a sore throat, are you absolutely sure you want to stop taking it on day 3 just because you feel better? That simple, inexpensive little bottle of antibiotics is quite literally the only thing standing between a child and a lifetime of cardiovascular devastation. Finish the prescription, stop the domino effect, and protect the heart. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.